Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of Through the Fire. I am your host, Ryan Wickline, and today we're joined by a very special guest. He is the rapid growth specialist, Dr. Joseph Drolshagen. How you doing today,
I'm
Joe?
doing great, Ryan. It's great to be here with you. I'm looking forward to a powerful conversation, my friend.
Man, like I talked to you about in the pre-interview, I'm kind of fascinated by what you do, and I love talking about mindset.
Yeah, me too. I've been doing so for 4 decades. But I
You've
really
been doing
do,
quite
man.
a lot longer than me, but
Yeah, it's almost been like a best friend. It's almost been like a mistress to me. You know, I got pilot friends of mine, and they talk about their plane as like their mistress. They have a mistress funds, and it all goes to the plane, you know. And mine has been the total mindset.
Nice. So the number one question the audience is probably wondering, who is Dr. Joseph Drolshagen?
That's a great question. You know, I'm a man who's learned a lot from my experience. I've been brought a long ways from where I started out. And I just have this deep passion for multiple reasons. I have this deep passion to help people live better lives because that's not what was exemplified to me. You know, and as I go through this, and I started all of these works, Ryan, just to fix me because I thought I was broken. And in doing so, I start understanding and discovering what I get to help people work through today, man. That just fills my heart. I just love what I get to do. You know, I'm a father of one child that I absolutely adore. I'm a new grandfather to my first grandson, and that's awesome. And I love living in freedom to create, freedom to produce, freedom for impact, you know, all of that. I just love that. I do a lot of things for enjoyment, anywhere from fly fishing to pickleball to hang gliding to motorcycling and traveling. And I just love that I get to live this life. And it was off because I thought I was broken, which we started talking about a little bit through the fire. You know, that fire has sharpened me.
Yeah. Can you explain some of the fires you went through early on?
Absolutely. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. I actually lived in Detroit for part of my youth. And I saw my parents, man, they were really, really good people. They were blue collar people. They come from blue collar backgrounds, you know, and I watched my mom and dad continually beat themselves up health wise, working as many hours as they could, doing everything they could do, living in constant stress and worry about not being able to pay bills and things like that. And like I said, they were good people and they didn't have these tools available back then, you know? So that's what I grew up being taught is life is a struggle. You know, if you want something, and we've heard this even from coaching early on, if you want something, you know, you got to be willing to work your butt off for it, trade off your life for it, everything else. And I followed that. And I was taught that a man gets a job, supports a family, and hopefully lives long enough to enjoy some retirement. And I bought into that hook, line, and sinker. And I set out onto I didn't expect to do anything when I came out of high school. I didn't expect that I was worthy of college and things like that. So I got a job in a shop cleaning oil out of machines, you know. So I was grimy, my fingernails with dirt, you know, and that's what I did. I didn't like to do it, but that's what I thought my lot in life was, you know. And then as I went further into that brokenness and ended up not stumbling really, but mentored into going into corporate America, got into sales at the ground floor level, you know, and from there I was responsible to build territories, and man, I would work day and night exhaustively. I would travel 3,000 to 5,000 miles every week just trying to build territory. And in doing so, I missed out on so much of life. You know, one of the other reasons that's really passionate about what I do for me, other than with my parents, that's a first passion. As I started understanding, figuring this stuff out and everything, I don't want anybody else to have to live the life my mom and dad lived. Because like I said, they were really good people. They loved us 5 children and everything. And the stress and burden that they went through constantly in life was just, oh God, it just breaks my heart. And when I was in sales in my later 20s, my son was born. But before him, we had a pregnancy that was born at 24 weeks and lived for some hours on equipment and then passed. And then my son was born. And then we had another third pregnancy that was like the first one. And so when I say that I adore my son, like what a blessing and a gift he is in my life, that's where I'm coming from with it. But Ryan, at his first birthday, I wasn't back in Michigan celebrating with him. I was out in Indiana trying to build a sales territory, and I spent that entire day brokenhearted. And, even as I talk about it today, it still hurts that I missed that because I was doing what I thought I was supposed to be doing. And so many people are going through life, or they're growing the business, or whatever area it is, finances, things like that, is they're going through it thinking that that's their lot. That's what they have to do. That if it's not working, they got to work harder. They got to put more into it. They got to, come up with strategy, like all this stuff and everything. And it through my studies, none of it's true. Once I started understanding the mindset and how it works independently and interdependently, which we'll get into, I'm sure, is I went in a year and a half, I went from barely scraping by, always nervous I was going to lose my job, not enjoying weekends or time at home and stuff, because it was always that anxiety and that fear under the surface that I lived through. And then as I started learning these tools and implementing them, within a year and a half, I started landing $18 million year-over-year contracts, $22 million. The highest one was a $25 million year-over-year contract. And so as that shifting started changing and that alignment started happening, all of a sudden, everything started changing in my life. Everything became easier and greater results. And that's, I'd already dove into it, but now I was going through the process and method. And then I went up through the corporate, you do really well in sales. They promote you up to help others do well. And I did that very well. I did that very good. I promoted, I had in multiple organizations, I had the highest number of top producers in the company's history. And then what happened is I helped a company that got themselves in bankruptcy get back to profitability. And I love working with people. I love working with the sales guys and seeing them, rise up and things like that. And at that time, I was working with a couple other small business owners while I was working full-time in corporate. And I loved what was happening there. I didn't like all the stuff you have to go through with with being a VP of sales. All the other things you're responsible for and you're reporting to the board on, and you're doing forecasting for, 90 days, 6 months, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, all that stuff and everything. I found it useless and I didn't care about it. But what I cared about was working with the individuals and helping them elevate the life they were living. And so at some point, I just got to a point of going, man, I can't keep doing this so much, because I had more people coming to me from outside to help them. And I was like, okay, as soon as we get new owners in here, I'm going to resign. And within 3 more months from there, we had new owners come in, drop $12 million in operations and start going in a 5-day-a-week run. And I resigned, moved down here to the mountains of South Carolina. I didn't know anybody. So I started going out every day, handing out 5 business cards to people and just meeting them. That led to me speaking at Chamber of Commerce. It led to this, led to that. And all of a sudden the doors just started opening.
Crazy.
Yeah, I know. And in that struggle period, I've abused alcohol to the point I had to ask for help. I've abused gambling. I tried to use all these other mechanisms to keep me going forward at the pace I thought I was supposed to be going forward at. And that wasn't for me at all. But it took a lot of beating my head bloody up against that wall, that cinder block wall of life, and the pains and everything that come with it to learn that.
Yeah, that's usually how it happens. You got to go through the pain, like we said before, Go through the pain and struggle to get to the other side.
Pain is a great motivator until we no longer need the pain. And when we get into more details of what I do and how I do it, I'm excited to share that part as well.
Nice. So what led you to become a coach?
You know what? I didn't plan on it or anything. Even when I set out to do this stuff, I was trying to fix me because I was broken, and I couldn't figure out why all these other people were doing this stuff and they were just like getting ahead and they're taking Friday off to go play golf, coming in half a day on Monday and things like that to get the week going and stuff. And I'm like I said, traveling 3,000 to 5,000 miles every single week, trying to build a territory and barely scraping by. I couldn't figure out what the difference was. So once they promoted me and once I started working with sales personnel one-on-one with what I knew at the time, which was before I even had a method or anything, it was just the process that ironed out of what I was following and made it unique to them. And now all of a sudden I saw them starting to open up. That just kind of lit that fuse. And then as we got busier and once I get in bankruptcy and that whole thing happened, that was a time when I said, man, I love helping people grow. I don't like all this other corporate busyness that I have to do. And throughout that process is where that decision came to point.
Nice. What types of services do you provide?
Well, it depends. I do anything. I coach, and I'll coach one-on-one, group coaching things. I don't do group coaching like I'm not interested in building an empire out of this. My mission is to positively impact people's lives. And so that's what I focus on. I do it through different means. Some areas I'll do it with consulting, so it's really set for what the needs are of the individual or group or organization I'm working for.
Nice. What is the biggest challenge your clients face?
I'd say the number one, most people would say it would be financial growth, business growth, revenue growth. But I'd say the biggest one really is their time. That's the most precious commodity we have. And people burn through years and decades setting all the really important things aside of why they're building the business to try to get the business built, looking at the carrot out there, and what I learned in my life, it's not about the carrot. The carrot doesn't cause me problems. The stick holding the carrot is what causes me problems. So I think that's the number one. And then revenue growth for businesses would be the second.
So how do you get them to use their time more a little bit more valuably?
Ultimately, it's about the alignment. But almost every business owner I work with, the first thing I have to do is get them to throttle down a little bit. They have to throttle back because they're so used to going, and when we're doing that, we're missing so much of how easy it can be to do that and enjoyable. That's the other thing. Like people will tell me I'm full of, BS when I tell them that my clients enjoy that growth process. They can't like it. And I understand why, because I was there, they can't comprehend that it can be enjoyable and exciting and things like that to grow a business because it's so used to being, where you got to just pound the pavement and go at 150 miles an hour. So with the SMT method, there is there's a process. First off, the way it stands out from all other business growth type of programs there are and coaching or whatever, all that different stuff is most coaching programs have a locked model, right? So if you come into that model from here, Ryan, you have to contort who you are to fit that model. And then if I come into it from over here, I have to do the same thing. So we're actually going away from our powerhouse, which is who we are, to fit this model, to try and be who we're supposed to be in this model. And that's why less than 2% ever achieve the results promised in programs like that. I'd been through a lot of those programs and I learned stuff, but I never had any permanency in the results I experienced. So when I was developing the SMT method, it was really important that it's a model, but the model fluctuates to the individual. So if you come into it from over here, the model fluctuates to you and who you are and your uniqueness and what's important. And the way I do that is we come out of the gate developing what the SMT method refers to as a dynamic vision. So that vision is all about, it's very specific and unique to you. What do you want to achieve? What do you want your life to look like? And it goes beyond just, I want a $50 million business. It goes into the details of how you live at that $50 million, if that's truly what you want. How does that give you time with your family? What kind of things do you do? And it goes across the board, that vision does. So now think about this. Most people I talk to, I say, what do you want out of life? And they go, I don't know. I just want to get to the end of this year and have a profit, or I want to get to the end of the month and pay the bills and be able to cover my, workforce and things like that and stuff, the salaries and things like that. And we're so small thinking because we're so embedded in that go mode. So coming out and developing that vision automatically requires some slowdown in order to develop it. So once we get this dynamic vision, okay, now we start stepping into it. We start we're traversing that gap from where we are to where we want to be. And in doing so, the whole program, every module of the program is structured so that it bumps us up against the patterns and paradigms and belief systems and such in that subconscious that's causing the limitation. So I'll go really quickly, if that's okay, through the mindset.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the mindset consists of normally two things. With the SMT method, it consists of three. First, we have the conscious mind, and we all hear about that, right? What we think, what we say, the people we hang out with, the books we read, what we watch on TV, all of that stuff comes in the conscious mind. We have control over it, but it's all based on our choices of what's going on in the conscious mind. You know, people going, you know, like I'll talk to people and tell them about a client who went from $7.5 million in a 13-year high to topple over $22 million in 12 months. And they'll go, that's unrealistic. That's impossible. And for that person, Ryan, that will always be impossible. So what we do, and that's choices we make on the conscious mind. Okay. A lot of it can be driven by what's in the subconscious programming and stuff. So we have this conscious mind and we have control over it. And it's all the stuff I described. And then we have this subconscious mind. And it's what I call this motherboard within our subconscious that hosts all of our patterns, our paradigms, our programming, our belief system, our experiences, even experiences we didn't personally have, but somebody told us about. Like one of my clients, when we started working together, he said, I only want my business to get this big. And I go, why? Why wouldn't you want to explode? What's stopping you? He goes, oh man, I had a friend of mine who built a business like that. And he said that he would never do it again, that it's taken over his whole life and this and that. And the guy's doing like over double what the other guy was doing right now. And he's got more freedom than he's ever had. So he no longer believes in that belief system that caused him to stay limited thinking and stuff. So as we're going through the subconscious, like I said, that hosts all of our programming, all of that stuff. We don't have control over that other than what we're feeding it from our conscious. But once it's in that program, there have been studies that show 85 to 95% of the results we experience in our life are determined by that programming. And the way that works, that programming triggers the brain waves to the actions we take or we don't take. So if I have programming in me that says there's no way a business could go from 7.5 to $22 million in 12 months. There's no way that's possible. Guess what? My growth, I'm setting that perception up that it's impossible. So on my life experiences, I'm going to experience maybe 10% growth a year, 12%, 15 would be high, things like that. I won't let it go. I will not take the actions to allow it to go above that unless my belief system changes. So the whole program is geared to bump up against those patterns, those paradigms, belief systems, all that stuff. So then we can shift that until we identify it, we can't do anything. Once we identify it, then we can go in there and we can shift that programming and open up the door to greater results. So now we have the conscious mind. That's the knowing of what we want. The subconscious is the doing part of what we want. So now what we're starting to do is bring alignment to those, put them in alignment. Now what's going on in the conscious is being fed in that programming of the subconscious and leading to, triggering brainwave to take the actions to lead to that. On top of that, the SMT method, what it does is that dynamic vision is the head of all of it. So you got your dynamic vision, which we set up to be the reality that we choose to focus on for our life. That helps the conscious mind focus on the things leading to it. We've rewired the programming in the subconscious mind. Now we have complete alignment from the vision of what we want to the conscious mind and how we're spending our time to the subconscious programming within us. And all of a sudden, things start happening out of the blue, coincidence, whatever you want to call it. Things start happening very rapidly. We start overhearing things. We start noticing things. All of a sudden, people start showing up to serve and things like that from that process happening. And that's a general way. There's a lot behind it, but that's a general way of how it works.
Yeah. Manifestation is real.
Yeah. Yeah. What we think about, we bring about. All those things are true. But where I always had a hard time with them is the application is taught as a one size fit all. And I'm not like you. We might have similarities, things like that.
Yeah.
I have clients. One part of the thing we do is as we're traversing that gap, is we start developing systems of accelerating habits that are unique for that individual. And within the hundreds of clients I've served over the past decade, not two of them have the same systems of accelerating habits because they're unique to each individual. So now we're setting up a pathway of success for people based on who they are, not who they should be. Because that's never permanent. We can never act like somebody other than who we are for too long. At some point, it sprouts back up. It just causes too much confusion and mishap and misalignment and it just stress, anxiety, all that stuff start clouding up when we start doing those things, to the point, like I said, for me, I used alcohol to try and quiet it down. I've used gambling to try and quiet it down. I had used different things to try to quiet it down. And all this stuff I do, all the stuff I've been doing, there's multiple times I gave up on it. The one time I took every book, everything I had, and I mean, I have, that's a very, very small example of my library that I've built up. And I took everything about it and I chucked it and threw it all away. Actually, I gave it to like a Salvation Army or something like that, or Goodwill, I think it was. And because I was like, man, this stuff doesn't work. And in that place of that is when the alcohol started picking up, the gambling started picking up, things like that. Because I had no foundation below my feet at that point.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy though that it does work, but it takes time at times. It takes a little bit longer than what you're expecting. You have unrealistic expectations at times.
Sometimes, but a lot of times it's because you're expected to take the same actions. I'm expected to take that. This person's expected that. Every individual in your audience is expected to take, and we all take the exact same actions. But we're all unique individuals. So that's that whole robotic training thing. One of the ways I love to explain that, if you and I are in a calculus class together in school, or algebra class rather, and we're both given a long problem to solve, if I go through and show every single step of that problem, I get the right answer, I get full credit for that. If you come along and you find a shortcut of even a few of those steps in there, and you're able to get the correct answer, you're not rewarded for your creativeness. You actually lose points because you didn't show every step of that.
Yeah.
And that's how the other stuff, that's how everything else goes as well with the roboticness.
Yeah, I get what you're saying too. And then you got to think that your goals are different than my goals. So why would I follow your plan?
Right. And that's what I tell every one of my clients, because they go, oh, just show me what you do. I go, no. It's not about me.
You got to find what works for you. You're a tailor-made part for you to change your habits. What works for you. And it's a lot of trial and error.
I'm to find and shift that programming. My whole purpose in people's lives is to help set the pathway for them to define their unique pathway. And in doing so, when we get done working together, because I don't ever want to work with people for life. I know that goes against some coaching methodologies. I don't want to do that. I want people to work with me, get this, move forward, and then whatever the next thing is for them to go and do and things like that and stuff. So because that's how people refer other people to me. When you try to hang on to people for life and stuff like that,
it doesn't work. You should want to get them better and then send them on to somebody else if they need somebody else. That's what I've always seen is send them to somebody else who can get them to that next step.
Yes. And it's funny because I've not intentionally, but I've gone up against some of the huge names in business coaching and things like that with people who have gone through their programs and haven't gotten anything. And then they'll come and work with me and they're hesitant and everything else. But we go through it, man, they just skyrocket. I mean, I've had people who've done that, who have gone from a couple $1,000s a month to now doing a year and a half later, now doing $55,000 to $60,000 a week revenue, a week, from a couple $1,000s a month.
Huh.
And the stories go on and on with the success my clients have. And to the point, and Ryan, is I guarantee results for clients that I work with. And I'm very picky on the clients I work with, because if somebody's coming along and they don't have an open mind, I can't help them.
Yeah. So what does make the ideal client for you?
Somebody who's typically, I hate to say this, but typically they're driven by pain and they're sick and tired of living the life they're living. They're sick and tired. I've had people that were right at the cusp, like I had been, right at the cusp of just giving up on their business altogether and stuff, And so what I do is help them develop the vision. And a big part of that vision is, what was your thinking when you started this business, before you started it, when you had the idea and it built up? What was that? Because within that, there is a powerful vision, and we start with that and recalibrate to that, But yeah, it's ideal clients is somebody. The biggest thing I look for is, and I tell people is, I don't know how to say it better, but is a beginner mindset. We all know a lot. The way I define a beginner mindset isn't the I know, because nobody can do anything for that person. They already know everything that they're ever going to know when they're locked into that. So picking up something new that would bring about change isn't possible. A beginner mindset is, we all know a lot of things, but what can I take from this and add to what I already know? That's somebody who's ready to move forward. Like I said, the pain, I hate to say that, is a motivator. But as we start working together, as we get the vision and right away start getting to see pieces of that vision start opening up, all of a sudden, we're not led by pain anymore. We're led by the excitement of the vision. So we're either pulled by our pain, which is the old school. And what we do is we transform that to being, pulled or pushed by our pain, or pulled by our vision.
Yeah. What types of limiting beliefs did you overcome in your own life before you started coaching?
Oh man, just the thing that life had to be hard. Just the thing that I deserved more than what I was experiencing, and I had potential beyond what I was experiencing. Those are things that like were really big things with me. Like I grew up seeing family struggle, financial struggle in my family and stuff like that, and I repeated that. Even though I didn't want to, and I recognized it in my family, I said, I'm not ever living like you guys live. I didn't say it out loud, but to myself, and sure enough, I got into my 20s and I was living that exact same way.
So what are some practical tips you could give to the audience about overcoming their limiting beliefs?
One of the first thing I'd say, and this is where it gets a little complicated to do, because I couldn't pick out my limiting beliefs. I actually went out, once I understood it and everything else, I went out and found somebody who would almost be like a sounding board for me. They were a coach, but like a sounding board that could help me pick up on those, because I couldn't recognize them, because it's so normal for us to live through that programming. We see, our programming determines our perceptions, and then our perceptions determine our results. So we're so used to living by those patterns, we don't even recognize them. What I would like to offer people instead is, how do you start flipping that around a little bit? And the best, quickest way I know to do that, and I'll tell you the process for it, is grab a pad of paper and grab a pen. Find somebody who's relaxing, whether it be at the shore of a trout stream, or whether it be in your recliner, or wherever, in the vehicle, wherever that comfort is. And get clarity on what you want. What do you want? What size do you want your business to be? How do you want your family to be? How do you want to live your life? What kind of places you want to go? Start getting clarity around those things of what it looks like, but also put yourself in that place. How's it going to feel to live that life? What that does is it starts tricking the subconscious, because we're putting conscious focus on it. It's being absorbed by the subconscious. So we start doing some realigning to that without going through and reprogramming.
Yeah, that's one thing that I see with a lot of people. They're not very clear and don't have much clarity on what they truly want.
Yes. And like I told you, when I ask people all the time, I'll meet people at a coffee shop or pickleball court, or even when I'm out riding a bike and traveling and stuff like that, and you meet another biker and you start talking, I go, what do you want in life? I don't know, man. I just want to enjoy this trip. Okay, what about beyond that? I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to get to that destination if you don't know where you want to go.
That's exactly what happens. Yeah, people want a $50 million business, but that's all they know, or a $25 million or $5 million or $1 million. I've had clients that come and say, man, I want to get $12 million, my business to $12 million as quick as possible. Okay, what does that look like? Why do you want that? This and that and everything. And we'll work the vision off of that. And all of a sudden we're going and they'll get to like $7 million and they'll go, I don't need anything more than this. Oh my God, I love my life. I love the freedom I have. I have finances for anything I want. I can build, I can, share this and that and everything else. I love the way I'm living life right now. And I want to stay here for a while. So we start getting that clarity. And then as we start opening that up, we get even more clarity into it.
Yeah. I like how you add like the entire life, not just one goal. You have a vision for every aspect of that entire life, and it's broken down into chunks, so it makes it clearer.
Well, you
it gives more clarity for it.
To make $12 million in a business, if that's as far as you look, what is that? When you start looking at how you get to live on that $12 million, how you get to, be in your family, how your family is, what kind of places do you get to go to, your health and well-being, what kind of things do you spend your time on to take care of yourself for longevity of life and all of that. Like when you start looking at the whole picture, a goal is hit or miss. That's all it is. We set a goal. I want $50 million in my business. Okay. It's hit or miss. When you get that vision, it's the becoming of. And I'll tell you something that's really, like, my chair a little bit. I'll tell you something that's really important here, Ryan. The vision is the becoming of. We cannot go out and get to our vision. The quickest, most exciting, and the most rapid way of doing so is we have to come from that person internally. So in other words, we have to become that person. And I'll give you an example of people who don't do that and they get all these, windfalls of money and stuff like that as lottery winners. You hear somebody scraping by, this and that, hardly being able to pay bills and everything and stuff. And all of a sudden they win millions of dollars in the lottery. And we read story after story after story of those people who end up in divorce court, who end up in drugs and rehabs, who end up in getting sued and losing it all in a short period of time. It's because they never adjusted the internal to be at that level.
Yeah.
So Go on.
I always tell people too, when they tell me what their goals are, I'm like, okay, now we got to change habits and everything, because guess what? If you were that person who could handle that, you'd already have it. So you have to become a different person to obtain that.
Perfect way of saying that, man. It's the becoming of that person in that vision. And that's what the SMT method is geared to do. And that's why it's based on the uniqueness of every individual that goes through the process, that goes through the journey of it, because it's the becoming of that. For you, becoming of what it is in your vision. For me, what it is in my vision. And so that's why you can't do the cookie cutter, one size fit all type of thing and it work well across the board. Yeah. It'll only work for a very, very small number of people.
Yeah. How do you manage your fears?
So I've had my pilot's license for quite a while now. And I used to think I was afraid of heights. But over COVID, everything was shut down. And I told you, I live up here in the mountains, so I could still go trout fishing and take the motorcycle out and stuff like that, So I didn't experience a shutdown like people in the city do. And one of the things is I thought I was afraid of heights. And I explained that in my head because airplanes have a floor that my feet are on. So I'm no higher than that floor of the airplane and stuff, So one of the things I did is I went off a 2,000-foot mountaintop with a hang glider. And my feet were in the air with me. And I went through the whole process. I've done the same thing when I've been asked to speak on stage early on and stuff like that. But that process was you really only get 3 steps and you're in the air when you're hang gliding. At the facility where I was anyways. So, and they tell you walk, jog, run, and you only get 3 steps. So I was getting ready. I was standing there and they gave me the clear. They said, it's okay to go. My first launch. I'm holding the hang glider on my shoulders and I take the first step and my heart starts beating. And that's what happens to a lot of us, whether it's business growth, whether it's, to make an investment into our business, whatever it is, and the second step, it got even stronger, man. I could feel it, like my heart beating in my throat, and everything in my head is going, stop, 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 stop. And I took that third step. And at that point, there's no going back. You can't stop on the third step because you're already on an arch, going. And so the third step, as soon as my feet left the ground, it was ecstasy. It was the most amazing feeling and sensation of soaring that I've ever experienced in flight like that, in air like that, and that's what happens. Our fear is only trying to protect us, but doing things the right way, investing in business, how we handle finances, building a saving, whatever it is, it's our fears trying to stop us from harm's way. But right on the other side of that fear is the point of ecstasy. It's the point of soaring. I had a good friend tell me a long time ago, fear is so wide, we can't get around it either way. It's so far up and down, we can never get over or under it. But typically when we go through it, it's paper thin. And people will not live their lives to their desires and accept minuscule scraps of what they truly want because of fear. And the whole process of fear is only strengthening us to go that extra piece, I had a friend of mine's car. I'll tell you, Nicholas, I had a friend of mine's car that mine was in the shop. And so I borrowed a friend's car and I was driving it and stuff. And I live up in the mountains. So you got to climb the mountain to get, and I was coming up and I had the cruise control set. And as I'm coming over this one hill, I noticed that right at the top where I thought it was flattening out, it actually gave it more gas. And that's how our fear is too. Right at the very end of it, before we get on the downcline or flat ground or whatever, there's a little bit more. And I think fear strengthens us to get that little extra nudge to get over it.
Yeah.
But it'll be there. Anything we do outside of our comfort zone, fear is going to be a part of it. But we can have fear and kick it the hell out of the driver's seat of our life.
What advice would you give to someone who knew their goals and how to get there, but fear was holding them back?
Yeah, again, it's going to be a part of the journey. If you're doing something new, it's somebody who's already built 3 or 4 $5 million businesses, okay? Them going and building another $5 million business is not going to be any fear because they know it all. They've done the whole thing over and over and, learned the things and stuff like that. Somebody coming into it new and building it, that $5 million business, there's going to be fear with it. But we can learn to use the strength in our fear to help us go even more expediently into what we want and to sharpen us and to strengthen us, because we can actually be strengthened when we go against our fears and go through them. So one of the things I do is tell people, look at what the fear is. All it really is, it's not saying we can't do it. It's just saying we haven't done so yet. And start using things like that. Like get people that, not the people that go, oh, there's no way in heck, I talked to people about hang gliding before I took that first launch, and they're going, there's no way I would do that. Don't do it. I wouldn't do it. And we have those people, right? We can find in our life, whether it's business growth or whatever, the people that say, oh, I built a business like that and I'd never do it again. I lost so much of my, and we have those people that'll say stuff like that. But what about the people that go, you can do this? The network of people that, the people that are close in that inside circle. I rely on them. Part of the program in the SMT method is to build partners in believing, build people who believe in us when we don't believe in ourselves. When we feel like we're drowning in the process of what we're going through and stuff. And there's so many different tools, Ryan, that, we utilize for that. And it's really about support. So many of us are programmed that, if I'm doing this, I got to do it alone. I can't ask for help and this and that. And realistically, we can't do it alone. You can't build a $5 million business alone. It's impossible.
Yeah. How are you so energized?
I love what I do, man. I like this conversation right here, man. In corporate, if I had to be in corporate, like in the office, 2 days in a row after 5 o'clock, I was exhausted. I was cheated. I was angry. I was, this and that and everything, short in my talking. And this stuff here, man, I do this stuff during the day. I have client calls. I get to talk, with you, people like you and stuff. And then at night, sometimes at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll do some videos in the studio and things like that and stuff, man. And I get done. I can't sleep. I'm so excited. Like I love that I get to do this. And each time I help somebody, I feel like there's a connection between that and how my parents lived before these tools were available. Each time I help somebody and they get more free time and I start hearing about them getting more time with their family, it reminds me of what I didn't get on my son's first birthday. And this person getting that is like a healing for me.
Yeah. Talk about purpose right there.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Are there times that you don't have the energy, but you have to force it out to help your clients?
No, there's times in between those things. When I'm doing these things, when I'm having these conversations, it's not fake, it's not manufactured. It's just naturally who I am. Like I literally love doing this stuff. Now there were times early on when I would try and work with, like, I think the highest I had was like 28 clients at a time. And there were times when it would start getting fatiguing. Not that I wasn't excited, but my tiredness was pulling away from some of that, natural excitement, that I have, enthusiasm that I have and stuff like that. So I learned that how to adjust for that and stuff like that, and one of the things I'll do when I speak on stage, I start out by telling everybody in the audience, they tell me I get 10,000 steps with every talk I give. And the reason I do that is because I move, man. If you give me a huge stage, I'm going to use that whole darn thing. And it's just because it keeps everything flowing. It keeps me, excited. But when I get done with that, I don't stay with people. I don't go out to dinner with people. I go to my hotel, Airbnb, wherever I'm staying at, and man, I just rest and come down. Because
you sound kind of like me, very high strung.
Yeah.
When you're around people, you give them all your energy, but then you got to go wind down by yourself.
And what I learned actually is not doing those things would put me at a level of high strung. I'm just passionate, but I'm real. This is who I am. When I do that and I take that time, it just helps me to kind of ease back and lock in that experience. Yeah.
How much does body language affect a person's confidence and performance?
A lot. Yeah. Not to other people, but for ourselves. Somebody who sits like this and their mouth is like Eeyore and things like that, and they talk like that. Yeah, that's impacting every moment of their life that they're like that. Now, I don't sit a certain way. I didn't practice posture and things like that and stuff. It just who I am. But when we're in a good state of being, not doing, when we're in a good state of being, we automatically sit up more. We automatically, speak clearer. We automatically have a little more enthusiasm into what we're saying. We automatically do that. When we're down is when we pull away, we shrink, all of this stuff and everything. And if you look at it, the only difference between somebody who has high anxiety and somebody who has high excitement, there's one differential in that. Do you know what it is?
No.
I'm not testing you. It's our breathing. When we're excited, we breathe out, right? Whew! When we're nervous, we hold our breath. And that starts constricting everything and tightening everything up. And all of a sudden our shoulders start dropping and our smile fades and things like that happen. So when I've been in times away is where I have been, I had to go to the doctor about 5, 6, maybe 7 years ago now. And I was really worried about what the diagnosis was, what the treatment was going to be, everything else and stuff like that. So I had about a 40-minute drive to the doctor. And I started driving and I could feel that anxiety building in my chest and in my thoughts. I could feel it building and building and building. And I just went, stop. I took a breath and I went, stop. And I knew that already about the breath impacting. So I just started breathing comfortable full breaths. And I just started thinking, man, this is going to go great. And that was the only thought I could really get out. This is going to go great. This is going to go great. And I just started breathing and breathing. And I breathed the rest of the way I got. And I went in there, and it was a great appointment. And what they thought I had, I didn't have. And the way we were going to treat what I did have was much easier and less, abrasive to me. And I don't know if that would have changed because of the breathing. But what I do know is I wouldn't have spent that 40 minutes a basket case of anxiety and fear.
Yeah. I love like taking deep breaths and recommend it quite a bit to people. It's like, hey, control your breathing. I mean, it will help you with your nerves, everything.
Yes. Yep. And that's part of the thing with people when they're anxious or afraid or scared or whatever it is, breathe. Make sure you breathe, because the first thing that happens when we get in that state is we start holding our breath. We start breathing shallower. We think about investing in our company, or we think about, something going on. I've worked with companies that they've been in lawsuits for not paying suppliers and things like that and stuff. And they'll be so anxious about it, and they don't want to not pay them. They just don't have the fun, and they'll start out there and stuff. And we'll breathe through that. And all of a sudden, all the pieces start coming together and everything works out with it. Everything ends up working out, but they get to go through that process, not building more fear and cementing more programming in that subconscious programming of how fearful life or business or anything else is.
Is it really possible to build a successful business or career and have healthy life balance?
I have hundreds of people who say yes. Now, a lot of people in the past are like, okay, I'll live happy once I get to, right? The carrot again. Once I get to that point, then I'll live happy. And there's people who have been successful at that. Not that many. They continue striving for, or ultimately what typically happens is they learn to be okay having scraps of what they truly desire. So, yeah, it's been possible. It's possible for me. I mean, I walked away from corporate America. I didn't retire and stuff like that. I walked away cold, and this thing has built up with this business. Every client I've worked with it gets to a point where they, again, enjoying that growth of that business with excitement. That's a whole different way than what most people are used to building businesses with. So you don't have that pain pushing you anymore. You got the vision pulling you into it. And so they start going forward with it. So it's an exciting process. It's enlightening. And then they see themselves growing and ultimately growing into that person of their vision.
Yeah. How can people get a hold of you?
Easiest way for anybody to get a hold of me, and I have a special gift for your audience tonight, Ryan, is anybody can get a hold of me at coachwithjoey.com. and can schedule a 15-minute conversation, an introductory conversation. It's not a sales pitch. It's just a conversation about the things we're talking about now and how to bring them in to the individual uniqueness of the person's life, and open that doorway and get them some tools that they can start utilizing to start bringing about differences in their results. And, there's all the social media, which I'm sure we'll have attached to it and stuff like that, and my website and all that to get a hold of me. But with anybody who schedules that call, from this interview, I'm going to give a free copy of my newest book, Break the Subconscious Pattern, Keeping Your Business Small. So they will leave the meeting with a copy, a PDF of that book, or an e-copy, ebook of it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll definitely put all that in the show notes and everything for everybody too.
Awesome.
Is there anything we haven't covered that you want to talk about?
I think you did a good job leading this. I think you really did. I guess the only other thing I'd like to maybe say a different way than what I've said is anybody, whether it's your business, whether it's your finance, whatever area of life it is that you want to improve, you already have the vision for it. You might not realize it because the process of trying to get it to come to fruition has been grueling or upsetting or disappointing or frustrating or whatever it may be. But that vision is already there. If you focus, I gave that tool about writing out the vision. If you focus on writing out that vision, you'll start getting clarity. You start remembering why you started doing what you're doing in the first place, and get back to that being the lead instead of the frustration, upset, and all of that stuff leading the way.
Yeah. I love like how you just have them write it out, like every little detail of it. I mean, it makes it everything real.
Yeah. 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 And if anybody goes through that process and wants to schedule a call with me after they do that, I review them and I make sure that, because a lot of times we'll put things in there when it's new to us, we'll put things in there that are what we don't want. I don't want to go bankrupt again, or I don't want to, and we put those in the vision. So I've done a lot of them to be able to go through it and say, okay, let's shift this to what you do want, and do things like that to help people with that vision.
Yeah, because if you put down the things you don't want, you're most likely going to get the things you don't want.
Well, you're focusing with your conscious mind on what you don't want.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right, final question. What is one piece of advice you'd like to leave our listeners with about overcoming adversity?
Yeah, adversity is only in our perceptions. Adversity is coming from the subconscious programming, but it's only our perceptions of what is. So again, if you're somebody who's I know, or that's impossible, or things like that, that's going to be your truth, and you can't change that. But if you become willing to become open to other possibilities, that's the quickest, surest way to shift that in your reality.
Love it. Great advice.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Joey, thank you so much for coming on here and sharing your insight with us.
Absolutely, Ryan. It was great talking to you.
Hey, man, I enjoyed it, man. I love talking mindset with people because not everybody gets it. I remember when I first started working with kids and telling parents and stuff what I was doing with kids and developing mindset. Like a lot of people looked at me like I was like some witch or something, peddling stuff. I'm like, no, I'm just trying to help them.
Yeah.
Get rid of them limiting beliefs they have about themselves and like all the negative thoughts they have.
So part of my organization, Ryan, that you brought that up, if I could take just another minute, maybe. Part of my organization is a nonprofit to go into high schools and work with 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. And instead of figuring out what they're going to go to college for the money they're going to make and everything else, start helping them identify what are you passionate about? And then how do you align that to a career? So now all of a sudden they're coming out of the gate sooner than what I did, much sooner than I did, and following that pathway and letting it lead them, through their life based on the vision of that and such. So as I do more of that right now, I consider it small, maybe 4 counties across America. But as that grows and stuff and having that's another thing I'm really heartfelt about.
Yeah. Kids need help. Kids need a lot of help these days.
I know.
They lack confidence. That's the one thing I see with a lot of high school age kids. They lack confidence.
And here's the other thing with that too. You're right. And I was one of those kids, And first, it took me years to understand about this SMT method. People, my clients are doing it in weeks now, and implementing and beyond it and stuff. And so, but with the kids, our programming starts out the day we're born, and it continues through our life. Right now, people listening to this, they're hitting that subconscious programming. If they disagree with it, they're hitting it that way. If they agree with it, they're hitting it that way, and everything else. So as we go forward, understanding that, and so we don't have to blame anybody for our programming, because everybody in our life was doing the best they could do for us.
Yeah.
So it's not their fault. And every single individual has programming in their subconscious working against them. Yeah.
So true. Well, thank you again for coming on here.
Absolutely, my friend. This is a great conversation. Thank you for having me, Ryan.
Yeah. Well, guys, that's going to be all the time we have here today. Remember, the only way to get what you want is go through the fire.